Welcome to NLL Lacrosse Talk with Steve Orleman of the Buffalo Bandits, joining Gary Groob and Frank Stanisci here for NLL Lacrosse Talk. Good to see you folks. And well, here it is. We've got ourselves a guy that probably will save the no, I guess I won't save the show. I don't know if you'll save the show, but oh, Steve, it's so good to see you. I mean, goaltenders to me in lacrosse, there's something about goaltenders. What made you decide, first of all, to pick up a lacrosse stick?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you guys for having me to the show. It's going to be an absolute pleasure, and I thank you guys for inviting me along. As far as for me wanting to become a goalie, for myself, it's always been a part of my life, but that isn't really the case for anybody else in my family. I gave a lot of credit to my brother. I mostly got into the role, to answer your question, to be better than Kevin, my older brother. So that's a big reason why. But for them, they got into it because my brother was playing hockey and my parents wanted to get him into a summer sport. So they went out looking, and there was baseball and there was basketball and there was all these other sports to play. And they ended up coming across this table that had lacrosse. And funny enough, actually, the person that was at the table was Ruth Dietrich, which is Steve Dietrich's mom. And so she got my parents to sign Kevin up for lacrosse, which then, introduced me to the sport, because ever since I was young, I watched my brother doing it, and I was like, I could do this, but I could do it better than he can. So I fell into love with the sport at a young age, and I've never looked back since.
So now that we know the motivation was sibling rivalry, what's kept you in the game? What is it about the game that, after you're finished, what's the satisfaction you get from playing the game?
Knowing that you went through like a very tough process, for one, with like 18 other guys that have your back as well, all fighting for like the same goal, is a big part of it for me. I've always tried to be like the most team oriented kind of person when it comes to that kind of stuff. So knowing that like I'm having their backs and they have mine throughout the entire game is a big one. Along with, taking pride in the fact that like you want to be the best team and you don't want other teams to take that away from you. So when you go into every game, you look to be the best and you want to come out on top.
If it's a long voyage. From the first time you pick up a stick, you decide to play, then you become a pro. At what point did you realize, this is really going to happen? I can be a pro.
I don't think it goes back to like Pee Wee, but I think when I first made the Team Ontario team back in Pee Wee, I knew that there was a class above other players, and I was like fortunate enough to be in that. So that's when it became a reality for me. As far as like the fact that like I can take this like a long way. I played hockey growing up, but I played AA hockey, never AAA. And so to feel like I was, exceeding at like a sport, like I could really relate to it, because in hockey, I never really truly like played at the highest level, but for lacrosse, I seemed to get a good grasp on it. And I was fortunate enough to have some good coaching that helped me along the way with that.
I don't think it's a bad word, but I think it's pretty accurate. Being an elite player than being just a player. There's that line you cross, and when you look back, you realize, your future could be a little further down the road. You could make more out of this than you originally thought. So that was the point that you realized it. Now, as far as being a goaltender, this is my last question before I turn Gary loose on you. Being a goaltender, what is it about being a goaltender that you think adds like the characteristics or the personality that you have that makes you the goaltender that you are?
I would credit my dad towards instilling confidence in me at a very young age. He always preached that, like, if I wasn't, confident in myself, then I was just beating myself at that point. So as a goaltender, I think any goalie will tell you the same thing, that confidence is such a huge part of the game. You want to be strong. And uh, I've had to battle with it throughout my whole career, ups and downs. But to know that, like, you can do it if you believe in yourself is very true. And so at a young age, I just truly believed that, like, I can be the best at this, and I tried to carry that throughout my entire career.
That's a great thing to do. Gary?
All right. Well, growing up in Kitchener, and of course you were in with the programs there. Now you talked about sibling rivalry, but of course Kevin also was there to coach you along the way as well, right? Because nothing like being pushed by your brother to make sure that you're on the right track.
Absolutely. Kevin was easily the most, like, encouraging for me, but he was also probably my harshest critic, and I think that was important to have. He knew when to pump my tires and when to, like, give me a little bit of a reality check, and I can honestly say that, like, I wouldn't be where I am in my career without him.
Right. Now let's talk a little bit about the programs in Kitchener as you were coming up through it, because also another famous guy that's a teammate of yours that also came through those Kitchener programs, Dean Smith, came through that as well. Actually, I had Brian Beazle on the show last week, and we were talking about some of the stuff out there as well.
Right on. Yeah, Bees is awesome. I had the pleasure to be under him for a short stint in Kitchener before we brought in Chris Driscoll, but I would have loved to have more time under Beazle. But as far as like Kitchener programs go, we also had, like, Chris Kluge, who's another teammate of mine, come through those ranks, and Kitchener seems to find these single talents that are pretty good.
Right. Now, junior, you start out with Guelph, wound up in Kitchener, and then, of course, the big trade gets pulled, and you come to the Excelsiors, and of course, I happen to pull out one of the old Minto Cup Excelsiors jerseys from 2018, that memorable year. And we're talking off air, man. If they pulled that just a year earlier in the 2017 thing when it was hosted in Brampton, that could have been a whole different aspect also. Because boy, what a team that you got put onto with, you're talking about Jeff T, Josh Medeiros, Clark Peterson, Tyler Biles, Seth Van Shepman, Travis Medeiros, Connor McClellan, Austin Hayes, and Jake Booch. I can keep going. This is what a team. And you get put in there in the middle of that season in 2018 for the Minto Cup run. Talk about jumping into there and the chemistry there and just fitting in and away you go.
Yeah, it was awesome. And, like, listen to the names you list off. I don't think that team gets enough credit for how good it was, and the amount of NLL players today that are on that roster. As far as, like, coming into that team and being introduced, it felt like a seamless transition. I think because it was later in the year, it was more like we're here to get, like, a job done kind of mentality, like, right away. But it's kind of funny. Like, when I got traded there, our first game was against Barrie, and they were a little bit at the bottom of the standings, and they chose to give my goalie partner Chunks a last game before they threw me in. And so we played Barrie, and my goalie partner played a really, really good game. And then we followed that up with Burlington, who at the time was, like, the number one team that we thought was going to be, like, the team that we met in the finals. And safe to say, they gave us a little bit of a reality check right away, and it was my first game with the team, and that stuff can be a little nerve-wracking. I knew I could play better, and I had a meeting with Dan Teed afterwards, and he said, "Listen, man, like, we're not worried about you at all. Like, you're going to do your thing. Don't worry about it." So it was kind of a good thing that we played Burlington right off the hop too, and it being my first game, because it gave us, like, this isn't going to be easy no matter how much talent we have. And ever since that game, I think we cruised on pretty well.
Definitely. And, even through in the playoffs, you lost Jeff Teat because he had to go to Team Canada. He was the first junior ever to make the senior team to go to Israel to play in the Worlds. And Clark Peterson picked up the reins and he became the leader. And I remember having an interview with Clark and, so modest and just roll off his back and we just do what I have to do. And, away you go. And, you guys were in the Powerade or whatever it was. So it was a year away from Memorial because it was under renovation or something like that.
Century Gardens, I think it was.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And, another strange place without carpet. Where the crowd was on the second floor and the game was below. It's a weird place, but But you guys just came together, and then Teak came back next round of the playoffs, I guess. So you guys beat Mimico, and I guess it was Orangeville, and away you went. And wow, and to go into the Orangeville barn and win it in there, and then come back home and win it again. It was just amazing to watch this team come together and know that the Minto Cup run was about to happen.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I think, that first round against Mimico, credit to them. Like, they put us through the ringer, and like you said, it gave Clark Peterson a big opportunity to show like what he can do, like aside from like being always grouped with Jeff Teat. And that series, oh man, like I don't think I had more fun in a single playoff series than I did that year with that one, because, we thought it was going to be pretty easy. We beat Mimico twice right before that, going into playoffs in the regular season pretty handedly. And playoffs is a different beast, and they stepped up really well. They took us to double overtime in game 4, which would have been an elimination game for them. And I just remember after they scored the game winner, just the fans breaking like the glass behind me and it just shattering everywhere. And it was like, oh man, like we got to go back and play these guys like tomorrow. It was nuts. And it came down to 1 goal difference. Like, we won by 1 goal. And after that, we got Teeter back, and it also showed how much of a difference Jeff Teat can make, because we played Toronto Beaches right after that, and we swept them. Yeah, we swept them, and then we played Orangeville, and they beat us the first game 6-3, and then I think after that we never looked back.
Right. It's funny when you're talking about the Mimico thing, because I think we all went back a year, and something that Brampton should have gone through, and Mimico, credit to Hutchcraft, he played out of his mind in these series, both years. Yeah. And I remember having Riley on the show also and talking about it, and they knew that was the push, because after that everybody was graduating, and of course they had to take it while they could.
Yeah. Well, I've talked. Sorry to cut you off there. I just want to throw a little snippet in that. Like, I've talked to Kev about it, because it's kind of some reason it goes full circle, because Kevin played in Okotoks, and in the Minto Cup in 2017, their last game was against Mimico, and they had to beat Mimico to have a chance, and they ended up losing, and Riley Hutchcraft was the goalie on the other team. And so the next year when we were playing against them, and I knew it was Riley Hutchcraft's last year, we kind of went full circle. And he got to be Kevin's last junior game, and I got to be his. So it was cool.
That's amazing. Yeah. Shows you how small a community it really is, right?
Seriously.
Now let's talk about that Minto Cup, because man, there was a lot of controversy in that thing. There was some strange reffing. There was a lot of the game 1 was nuts. And it looked like everybody was just running and gunning for Teeter continuously. And most mild-mannered guy in the world, and of course you're going to blame him. Yeah, Dan, I could see. Jeff, not a chance.
I don't want to spark too much conversation around it. I mean, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But when you're in the last 20 seconds of the game, and he's getting held down to the ground by 2 of their players, doesn't have the ball, and their ref all game had been giving it back to him. I think Teeter eventually said something to him, but nothing happened from it. We were able to, because they got like an empty net goal, we were able to still line up for the next face-off. There was no penalties called. And afterwards, we get the game sheet, and it's like Jeff Teat suspended for 3 games. And we were kind of like, well, how does that happen if there was not a single call during the game? And then I guess Teeter got thrown in there as like Dan T got thrown in there as well. So Teeter got to play still. Do I think we brought our best? No, I don't think we brought our best to that final series, unfortunately. And credit to Okotoks, they wore us down really well. Or not Okotoks, sorry, Coquitlam. But yeah, they wore us down really well. And I will say it definitely hurts not having your head coach on the bench as well.
Yeah.
So
no, I agree. You also got run in that series as well, if I remember.
Yeah, a couple of times. Behind the net, that one was pretty bad. I think at the time there was some talk about it being a dive. I can tell you it wasn't. My bell was rung pretty well on that. So I don't know. I don't know where people are getting their opinions from, but I mean, it's a competitive series, and you know what? I look back on it with a fond memory, and I do wish we got the job done, but you know what? They play us well, and you got to do what you got to do to win a Minto Cup, and right. I don't blame them for that.
And that winds up being Del Bianco's first and only Minto Cup, because he lost the year previous to the Six Nations juggernaut that was over in Brampton. So
pretty good team as well.
Yeah, that's for lacrosse fans, we all win, right? Because we get to watch some of the greatest in the world.
Absolutely.
And all you guys make it up to the NLL, which is just incredible. Now, 2019, still a strong team, but you guys lose a lot of names. You know, of course, Teat and Peterson is the prime ones to go up to the major series, and you know, you guys hold your own, but it's not the same as the Minto Cup runs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize, like, that team, like, we were counted out by the start of the season. We had graduated 12 or 13 guys from the previous year, and I remember like the predictions for that season being like Brampton will be like 8th or out of playoffs. Like they had written us off, and I mean, I know I did, and I'm pretty certain a lot of us took it like, what are you talking about? We were just in the Minto Cup. Right. Like to quickly dismiss us. It felt like a little bit of a shot. So we made sure to put a lot of pride in that season, even though we knew that was going to be tough for us to come out with a championship. But we finished really well. We finished 4th place going into playoffs. And I think that took a lot of people by surprise.
Definitely. 2020, everything gets locked down, and it screws up everything there, of course. Mm-hmm. The 2021, I guess it was, when Mark Grimes put that to a 2-week tournament together. Yep. And by that time, we're all jonesing. We need lacrosse, and you guys were the saviors. You guys were the first, you know, put together something, and away you go. Yep. Talk about that tournament, because it was amazing.
It was.
You guys came down to that final game against St. Catharines, and what a hell of a game that was. That had everything in it. It had fights in it, it had hits in it, it had goals in it, it had a comeback that almost came to fruition.
Yeah, but, goalies getting kicked out.
Just the idea of it was amazing.
Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree more with what you just said. Like the fact that they put that tournament on, but also a huge shout out to Mark Grimes and whoever was involved with the fact of letting the guys that missed their 5th year into that tournament, right? Because I was actually 22 at the time.
Right.
And I look back on it, it's like, wow, like what a great time. And I think I bring it up to people, and sometimes they say like, oh, like dismiss it, like it wasn't a real like turn or season or whatever. But I was like, you know what? Like we were playing 2 games a day, battling with teams that I felt every team could have won on any given day.
Yep.
And it just came down to who like got lucky enough to come up with a win, and we showed up and we were ready to roll, and we played really well. I think first game was against Oakville, and they actually like had the lead like 3-2 or something for the longest time. And we started our that tournament off with a win, and the only team that we actually ended up losing to was St. Catharines, who also had a pretty good roster of a lot of guys that I think play in the NLL now.
Yep.
And yeah, you fast forward to that finals day where we played Whitby in the semifinal, who was a great team, and we eliminated them. And then we played St. Catharines, and that game was back and forth. And I think mentally it boiled up to a certain point for me personally in that game, where you have 8 games throughout the week or the 2 weekends, and you put so much into it, and it's your last year and you want to win so badly that you got to do a better job me personally speaking to myself, of controlling your emotions. Now I don't fully think that a lot of the calls went our way. And so that also didn't help. But I mean, at the end of the day, it was a lot of fun to be a part of. I wish we won it. I think, and this might stir up some controversy, but I think if it was a 7-game series against St. Catharines, I'd like to think that we would pull it out, no doubt.
Right.
But you can't rewrite history about that. And you know what? They did what they had to do, and they won that game fair and square. So credit to them.
Right. Now, that tournament also did a lot for bolstering guys' stock. Nathan Grennan comes to mind, is someone who might have been drafted in second or third round. He becomes first-round pick for Panther City, I believe it was, in that draft. Austin Hazen also, I think, elevated his stock in there. A number of guys, because they got seen again, and they had great tournaments.
Yeah, I'm so happy you brought up Nate, because I love that guy. I love Hazer too. He's such a beauty, and he's the kindest person in the world. But I actually got the pleasure of billeting Nathan Grennan for the 2 seasons that he was in Brampton.
Right.
And me and him grew really close. And to see him get drafted to Panther City was so awesome, because you know what? He was a heart and soul kind of player for our team. I can't say enough nice things about the kid. I think he truly elevates in such a positive way whatever team he's on, in whatever factor, whether he's in the lineup or not. He is constantly trying to make his mark on the team. And I don't think that you can have enough of those guys on a roster, especially in the NLL. So yeah, it was great to see his stock get bolstered like that. And Nate's done a good job of proving what he's worth.
Absolutely. Both in MSL and in NLL.
Yeah.
Man, you guys get a chance to play there together now again too, right? So that's awesome as well.
Yeah, that was cool too, because we traded for him halfway through the year, I think, last season. So it was great to be reunited with him, and he truly became a rock star for our Kodiaks there.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about the NLL. You get drafted 19th overall by Georgia. My favorite question to ask everybody is, your first training camp, was it what you expected?
It was better, because I think my first ever training camp was actually flown out to Georgia, and it was like an open practice training camp. So initially, like right off the bat, I'm being taken to the market of where the team plays and getting to meet the fans instantly. It was better than I think some guys get in this league, where it's sometimes, you guys would know, right? You play in Six Nations, or you play in Oakville for your first training camp, which is cool. And you get to like be around the guys, and you get to appreciate like the hard work that goes into being an NLL player. But I feel like it took it up a notch when I got to be a part of that experience in Georgia. Funny enough, like you brought up being drafted 19th overall in Georgia. I totally thought that Georgia was the last team I was going to get drafted to, because they had 3 goalies already. They had Pooley, and they had Kev, and then they had Craig Wendy. And as far as other teams went, like there was not another team that came to my mind that had that kind of roster of goalies. So to hear them call my name was a bit surprising, but it was a good surprise. And I had a wonderful time playing under Eddie Como and Sean Ferris and Dan Latisseur there. And John Arlotta is a great man to be under an organization with.
Had every one of them on the show. So yeah, I know.
They're easy to talk to.
Sean and I talk all the time, because we looked at our program. We played against each other. We're the same age. So that's another what's showing how small a community lacrosse really is.
Yep.
But now you get on the practice squad, but you spend time at the ALL. Now I do the media for ALL. I love that league. Talk about how important that league is for an up and coming player.
It's huge. Like you develop like more than you would realize a player can. For a goalie especially, I'd never had like the proper access of getting quality shooters against me in NLL nets with a smaller stick, because in junior you're playing in junior A nets and you have the woody. So it was a good learning process for me. And Georgia at the time was actually very adamant on the fact of you need to play in this league and we want you to develop into a starting goalie one day. So we want you to get these reps. And as a young kid, I was like, no, just take me along with you everywhere you guys go. Like, I want to be a part of the team. So it's cool. It's cool that you get to play in that league and you have access to those kind of reps. But also at the same time, I was like a little bit on the outside looking in, and I would go to like home games or games like in Ontario or Buffalo. But other than that, I would never get to travel anywhere else with the team. So it was a little bit of both, where you had the good and the bad. But that league is important, and I think it's come a long way as well. When I look at it now, I played in that in games with that league where we had 18 runners, and I played in that game in games in that league where at the start we had about 8 runners, and we had to dress Nolan Clayton, my goalie partner, as a player in front of me. So the league's come a long way, and it's good to see it developing in a positive way.
Yeah, and it's so necessary because it teaches a lot of guys how to become professional players, yes, but how to stay professional players on and off the floor.
Yeah, you're playing against guys that are on the practice rosters of NLL teams, right? So there's no better way to judge your talent and where you need to be than against guys that are right there on the fringe of playing on an active roster in the NLL.
For sure. Now you get your big break when you get to New York and Riptide, and boy, oh boy, did you ever take full advantage of that. You broke the NLL rookie for saves. You set the NLL rookie for goaltender minutes with 987, named to the NLL All-Rookie team in 2022. Talking about taking the bull by the horns, you came in both feet and with a big splash.
Yeah,
really getting that break.
It was great. I had a lot of confidence coming into the year because I was coming off of that bubble season where I got to play with a spoon, by the way, in that season, because they didn't allow you to have the Woody for that tournament. So I felt comfortable, and I knew it was going to take a couple of games for me to get my footing. And I went in those 2 games just trying to figure out how I want to approach like my positioning and the way I attack the ball. And so we started off that season playing Rochester, and Laddie gave Goa the start. Goa, my goalie partner, and Goa played a great game. We took him to overtime, and it just didn't fall our way. And then we traveled to Philly the next weekend and played Philly, and I got my first ever NLL start, and it was a really cool environment to be in. Philly had a great crowd that game, and they were wearing their Christmas jerseys. It was really fun to be a part of, and we actually ended up traveling right after that game to New York, where we had to take on Georgia, and it was a doubleheader weekend, and we all know how tough those can be sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Guys are in great shape. It doesn't like fully affect you, but it was hard for our team where Georgia was waiting for us, and so they took us on, and they played us really well. And I remember after my Philly game, I was getting like messages after like the game from like Philly fans saying like, oh, like my grandma could stop a ball better than you. And lucky enough, like 2 weeks later, we're in Philly and we get to play them. And I had a great game. Fortunate enough to have the guys put the ball in the net for me too. And I got player or rookie of the week that week. And I remember like going back to see if like the person messaged me that was still there, and they had deleted the message already. So it's funny. It was a great season. And I give Laddie like a lot of credit for putting his trust in me that year. And it was a lot of ups and downs, but I truly believed that at the end of that season that like we had figured out like what we were doing and the direction that we were going in, and it was upward. So I had a lot of fun, and it was a great team to be a part of.
Right. And your brother gets traded to that team too. So again, you and Kevin are together, and another way to get grounded and also get pushed.
Yeah, totally. It was unfortunate that Kev was coming in with a shoulder injury, and at the time, I think he got like 1 game in, and he ended up re-injuring his shoulder. So it was another great chance to be with my brother, and unfortunately, it didn't work out in the way that I think me and him wanted, nor the team wanted, unfortunately.
Right. Now the big trade you get traded to Buffalo, 3-team trade, and here you are in 2024 in Bandit Land. First of all, I know you've been there just like me, watching, but it's a whole different thing when you're playing for them.
Yeah.
Talk about the electricity of getting into Bandit Land for the first time in a Bandits jersey.
It was, well, even the news of being traded there, you get like this overwhelming like feeling of like there's a huge expectation for you. And I remember, funny enough, like I was in Italy when I got the call from Rich Lisk about getting traded. It was our last night in Italy, and literally right before he traded, he like called me. I was like, okay, it's my last dinner in Italy. I'm gonna like go all out. I'm gonna order like pizza, pasta, all this food. And the waiter was actually like, dude, like that's a lot, man. Like you're not gonna eat all that. And I was like, you want to bet? Like I'll take it down right now. Like don't worry. And so he's like, all right, man, you said it. And he writes it down, whatever. And then I get the call about being traded there. And I come back to the table. I'm like, and then here comes the food. I'm like, I'm not eating that. Like I couldn't eat a single thing. Like the amount of emotion that came over me, it just wouldn't allow me to. It's a lot of pressure at first when you come in, because you know the crowd is going to be big, and you know that they have had a history of having such great goaltenders. You can list them off like Steve Dietrich, Anthony Cosmo, and now Matt Vince. You want to be able to live up to the expectation that they have. After a while, you get comfortable with it, though. You start to figure out that these guys are here to support you. These fans are here to cheer you guys on in a positive way. And yeah, every now and then you can hear it from them, but for the most part, they're a very positive group. And I've met a lot of great people along the way in Buffalo that have been very encouraging. And getting to play behind Matt Vince as well has been a huge benefactor.
Let's talk about that for a little bit as him as a mentor, because we all know about his work ethic.
Yeah.
We know about his idiosyncrasies and all the other things that go into his game day and everything else about it. But working with him, what's it like?
It at first was a little bit intimidating because you don't know what to expect coming in. But Matt's been super open with me, and I actually can't like thank him enough. I don't think he knows how appreciative I am of it. I've learned a lot under him, actually. And one of the biggest things I'll take away from it is that when I was in New York, I feel like I wasn't vocal enough about what my expectation or what I thought that we should have been doing like defensively in front of me. And coming into Buffalo, the way that Matt can like command that he has like that commanding presence of like, this is what we need to be doing. This is going to give us the best chance at winning. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to go down with like the way I want it to be. And it's a performance-based business. And I respect that so much that like I've learned from the fact that he takes pride in the fact that he's going to execute the defense that he wants to see, because at the end of the day, if the ball goes in the net, it's on him. And all D guys will tell you that, you know what, it's not on you, it's on all of us. But as a goalie, you take all that responsibility. So Vino's the man, and you know what, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to back him up.
Right, and also having Cosmo as a coach too doesn't hurt either. One of the greatest.
Yeah, and Steve Dietrich too. It's a goalie union organization there in Buffalo, and it was nuts too. Like my first year playing there, we had Steve Dietrich, Anthony Cosmo, Matt Vince, me, Shanahan, and Konstantopoulos. So it was a goalie crew, and it was like, what is going on here? There's so many goalie minds, but I think it's a positive thing too.
Right. It's also that little bit of nudge to keep you honest, right?
Yeah, you got a lot of guys pushing you.
Can I add something in here? It also doesn't help that you're the last guy to pick the ball out of the net.
Yeah, you're
the guy picking the ball out of the net.
Oh, I know, and you always got the ref waiting there, eagerly happy to grab the ball from you, and you're like, "Can you just give me a second, man?" Like,
Right.
mentally going through it right now.
Well, it's interesting you say mentally because mentally you got to stay tough being a backup because at any given point you can be going in and into that pressure situation.
Yeah, we as a team have a huge amount of faith in Vino, and actually, the only time I've gone in so far this year is because he was doing so well that I actually was able to get in and have some minutes because we were up by so much, and he was stopping the ball so well. Um, but yeah, it's a tough position to be in, and one that I felt like it took a while for me to get used to because growing up, I was never in that spot.
Mhm.
Um, like even since my first year of junior, like as a 16-year-old kid, like I backed up my brother for a little bit, but then he got traded out west, and I played like 9 games that season in playoffs. Like I've never like officially like had that backup role. So and then like you even dated back to New York. Like I played 16 out of the 18 games in my first season. So mentally it's a different situation, and it took some getting used to, but I feel like I have a good grasp on it now, and to always stay focused no matter what.
It helps you're a team guy too, because you have to be the typical, really the biggest team guy on there, on the bench, first off counting guys and making sure that everybody's focused and talking with Matt in whistles and in breaks to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, it is, and Vino's a very smart goalie, and he wants you to be paying attention and telling him what you're seeing as well from the bench, and what they're running, and where the guys are shooting. So I try my best to like help him along with that. As far as like working the door goes, I don't think it gets enough credit. The
Oh yeah,
position in the sport, because it's hard, man. Like guys want to run out so fast and so quickly. But I feel like this team, at least from my experience, they're very patient, and they trust me to tell them when to go out the door, because you don't want to be the guy to get a too many men penalty, and then you feel like that's on me, and then if they score, it's like wow, like I'm not even like on the floor, and I'm still like having like a negative impact on the game. It's the worst
right.
feeling in the world.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Now, when I was well, let's just talk about winning the championship because you were there last year. I was in the press box for the last 2 years, and the floor was rumbling under us. That's a little unnerving when you're up on the roof and the floor is rumbling because 19,000 people are going absolutely bananas. But on the
Yeah.
floor, that energy of the elation, describe that.
Oh, chills. Like I don't know if you can ever fully truly like get a like exact description on how it feels, but like Banditland, they know what they're doing. They get it, and their fans are smart. They understand the game, and when you're down like 8-4 to Toronto in game 2 at home, and you guys rally off to win the game like 10-8, like it was the coolest environment I've ever been a part of in any circumstances. Like you just get overwhelmed with emotion.
Yeah.
And to win a championship there in that building with all your fans there, is truly special. I wish I could find it like the perfect word for it, but there isn't. There's no emotions, like no words that can describe that feeling. Um, Other than like I love Banditland, and I love the team that we have in Buffalo.
Right. Fast forward to this year, you guys start out great. You know, yeah, undefeated through half the season. Obviously this last weekend, a little rut in the road, but nothing major. Now, talking with you and a bunch of other guys a couple of weeks ago, when we're talking about 12 games in 10 weeks, the biggest thing is staying healthy. The team has enough talent to do anything, but staying healthy that you don't limp into the playoffs is first and foremost.
Yeah, totally. And we saw 2 of our guys go down this past weekend, right? In the doubleheader weekend. It's a tough thing to do. It's a very physical sport, and you don't want to see guys getting hurt. And especially when you have a long stretch of games heading like into playoffs. But I think it's been our motto, or our motto this season is taking it one game at a time, not getting too high, too low. Like our focus is the game coming up and beating that team. Like there's nothing else on our mind. And I think we've done a great job of that so far this season. We knew that doubleheader weekend had been staring us down for a while. But I thought the boys were resilient and they showed a lot of heart in those games. Like to battle back against Toronto after a 5-0 deficit, like that shows you like the perseverance that the team has. And we did the same thing against San Diego. Like I'm pretty sure it was 5-1 at one point or something like that. So
4-0 and 5-1. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So we're a resilient group. And we're going to miss the two guys that got injured in Robinson and Spanger. And I'm hoping that they can come back as soon as possible because they are huge parts of our back end. They're important players, but we're a resilient team and we're going to find a way to get the job done.
Definitely. I was actually the guest of John Gertler on the radio broadcast Friday. And we were talking about, the 5-0 thing and a little bit sluggish after a week and a half off. But boy, once you guys got your feet about you and used your size again, it was a whole different animal and quite a hell of a game from start to past finish.
Yeah, I think once you see that offense start rolling with Dane, Frage, Kluch, Bernsey, Bucky, DeHoga, like, gosh, like what a crew to have. I think there's guys on our offense that could be number 1 O guys on another team.
Right.
And that is such a luxury to have. And the fact that we've kept them in this organization for such a long time is truly a testament to, I think, the team and the group that we have. And also, like, give him his flowers to Steve Dietrich as well, because you know what, he's done a great job.
Definitely. And your defense also, a little unsung, really. Priolo, of course, been steadfast there for years. But I think with the addition of Dawson, you guys not only got bigger, but you got meaner.
Yep.
And anybody who's going to come anywhere close to the crease is going to pay a heavy price, and it stops a lot of guys from trying to get inside.
Yeah. I'll say it like you said it too, unsung. I think our defense is easily like the number 1 defense in the league. And there's no doubt in my mind about it. They're all-star defenders. As far as Paulie goes, he's so tough, so strong, so smart, but he also vocally in the dressing room is such a good presence to have. He came in last year in a season where I think we were having a little bit of like ups and downs. We were winning games and we would lose like 2, then we would win 3, then we would lose another 2. And it was something that I think the organization, I mean, I wasn't there before, but they're not used to. So I think mentally it was a challenge for us. And we brought in Paulie and he was like reality check, like calm down, it's okay. And he brought in like a calming presence as hard as it might be to believe Paul Dawson can be calm. He is.
Paul. So yeah, he is that off the floor, nicest guy you want to meet. On the floor, probably a guy you want to stay far away from.
Totally. When he was in Rochester, I was in New York, I was like not a fan because I would see like the stuff he would do on the floor. And now I've gotten to know him and I'm like, wow, this guy's the dude. Like, he's the real deal. And having him and Steve Priolo and Nick Weiss and such a great presence of guys in the room that truly know how to like properly address situations and nip it in the butt when they need to, or like to motivate you in a very positive way. Like those guys get it. And it's amazing to be a part of.
Yeah, I think about the days when, when thinking back to Six Nations with Paul on the defense with Brody Merrill, another guy in the same cloth, same cutout exactly. Nicest guy off the floor. But boy, the mean streak in there is something to behold. And when the two of them were there together on the floor, you want to stay far away from the net.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine those two guys together.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about MSO. We brushed over it briefly. You and Coburg, you're playing under another bandit, Brandon Francis, who had a storied career in Buffalo. And now as a coach, what's it like playing for Brandon? Because I've noticed over the last couple of years since Brandon's taken over, there's quite an edge to that team.
Yeah, I love it. Such a motivator in the way that he can address the team before a game, and I truly respect that a lot. I know that he was a super tough guy when he played lacrosse, and I think he would easily get out there with us if he could. But I think he's brought that physical edge to Coburg, and it's something that we've missed. It's a hard league to be successful in. I won't beat around the bush. Like it can get exhausting with the fact of like other teams bring in guys that are all-star NLL players, and they can just like bring in as many of them as you want. And then you got teams like us in Coburg where we got guys that are like fighting for NLL spots or still at college or like school. Like it's kind of like two sides of a coin there a little bit. And to have a guy like Francis that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to him. We're there to win the game no matter what. It's great to have, and to have him reminding us as a team to not get discouraged. Like these teams are supposed to beat us, but we're going to make sure we can do everything we can to upset them and beat them. It's great.
Right. Playing for John Webb too is just really great because he's such a super guy and really involved with everything as well.
Yeah, Webbsy's awesome. I think he's done a great job over the years with Coburg. I think it's unfortunate, and I think he would tell you the same thing, that not everybody is as committed to playing for the team or have other priorities, whether that be PLL or something else, that will take precedent over MSL and playing for Coburg, because it's a little bit of further drive for some guys, and the money isn't as good as it is in Six Nations. So
yeah,
Webbsy's done his best that he can, and I mean the guys that we have in that locker room are so fun to play with, and I truly feel more motivated because I have such a good bond with such a great group of guys on that team.
Right. I would think, an excuse to get to the beach in Coburg on a Sunday afternoon. I'm there.
Yeah, the problem, I totally agree. The problem is most guys got work in the morning that they got to get to or something. So it's like, all right, well, 2.5 hour drive out to Coburg, and then you got to drive home on a Sunday and then work the next day. Like I can see why for some guys that can be a little bit like hard to get up for. Yeah. But you know what? That team, we've persevered through a lot. And I don't know if this is going to be a future question or not, but I think a lot of people had us like written off going into playoffs last season against Oakville. Even that was a team coming out of Senior B, because they had a good squad, but we beat them twice throughout the regular season. We knew that we could beat them in playoffs.
Yeah. And
so it's kind of fun to be on an underdog team in some type of way.
Yeah, when you have nothing to lose, it's great just to keep playing and just enjoy the game, because you don't have the pressure.
Yeah.
Especially coming out of Bandit land too, where there's so much pressure.
Yeah. It's a nice change of pace.
Have they talked to you about with this long stretch about games that you're going to be subbing in for Matt? Are you going to be able to pry him out of the net so he gets a bit of rest?
Listen, you mentioned it slightly earlier. Vino is in great shape, and there's no doubt in my mind that guy can play all 18 games of the season if he wants to. So as far as like a heads up around it, nothing yet, but as the backup goalie, your job is to constantly stay ready, right? And
how do you do that?
Pardon?
How do you do that?
Mentally, it can be tough, but I try my best to like take pages out of Matt Vince's book and dive myself deep into video and prepare like against shooters that we're playing against as best as I can. And you know what, when we have such a talented offense that I get a lot of shots from in practice, it helps a lot with the fact that like if I can like stop these guys, then I can stop the guys that we're going to be playing against too. So mentally it can be hard to be fully like ready all the time, but that's part of the job. It's what you get paid for, and you got to remind yourself of that.
I gotta believe it's tough, because we talked, when we started this interview, you talked about being competitive, the sibling rivalry and all that. I'm not trying to hit a nerve or nothing, but just out of seriousness, it must be really hard to sit on the bench and want to be out there. How do you temper your thinking? I get it that, you get these guys in practice and all that kind of stuff. Being a pro sometimes means you have to take a seat, right? How do you deal with it, like emotionally?
Yeah, I got 18 to 24 guys in that dressing room that I can lean on and talk openly with. When the game is on, I know that it's my role to be the best supporter that I can be for the team and for Matt in the net. So at the end of the day, winning takes precedent over everything. And if I can have a positive factor in that, whether I'm playing or not, I try my best to do so. So if that means being Matt Vince's like support throughout the entire game, then I'm going to do so. And I got to put my own like feelings of I want to be playing in check, because we're here to win games. We're here to make Bandit Land proud. And these people played. John Tavares says it all the time before a game. These people paid their hard-earned money to come watch us play, and we need to take pride in that. So if that means putting myself in check a little bit, then I'm okay to do so. And I know that my time will come eventually. And you know what? It's been a process kind of mentality ever since getting moved from New York, because you got to enjoy the process, and certain things work out in different ways that you expect them to. And you got to be okay with that.
Yeah. And I guess we as viewers who watch, you and your situation, we have really no idea what it means to be ready. I'm sure we could sit here for an hour and talk about what it takes to be ready.
Yeah. For me, it takes like focus on tracking the ball and watching what kind of plays are being run by their team to be mentally ready for when and if you do get in that net. I work my butt off in warm up just to make sure that I'm getting as many reps as I can to be ready in case I have to get in the net and stop the ball for us.
Right. Gord Brown asked,
it's a good challenge.
Yeah. How much do NLL goalies talk to refs, and do you have a favorite, not so favorite ref to talk to, not talk to?
Listen,
Gord is an OLA ref, so
Oh boy.
Yeah, listen, I have a good relationship with a lot of the refs, and I think I've also tarnished some of my relationships with some of them. I hope there's no hard feelings about it. It's a tough question to answer, because you know what, like, you get so caught up in some games as a goalie too. And I've worked on it so much. When I was in junior, I think I was a little bit relentless with them. And I look back on it and it's like, wow, like I need to put myself in check a little bit. But then like, also I think refs have their good and bad days too. I wish I could have that mentality when playing in games sometimes, because you can easily lose sight of it. As far as like a favorite ref, they're all pretty good. I like Crotman. I get along with him very, very well. Gardonio, I get along with. I haven't had Todd LeBranch very much, but when I've had him, I think he's done a great job. Like, it's not an easy job for them by any means, but it's not an easy job for a goalie either. So I hope they have some slack for me in the net as well when I'm screaming at them that it was in the crease and it wasn't, or whatever. So yeah, I try my best to positively talk to them during games when I'm on the bench. In games, hot and cold, I try to stay more focused.
Sure. Let's fast forward a little bit. I want you to talk about you as a student of the game. Now, as a teacher of the game, teaching young goalies, what would you be teaching first and foremost?
Mentally strong. I think that is one thing that I preach a lot. And positioning is a big thing for me with goalies at a younger age. I am fortunate enough to be involved with the Kitchener Junior A team, and I've gotten the chance to coach a couple of great goalies there. We brought in a kid from Orangeville with Richards. He's a fifth-year kid, so I'm still finding my balance with that kind of stuff, whether to get involved like a lot when it's a 5th-year guy and he's been around the league already and he knows like what he's doing. So I try to give him a little bit more space. We have Wismer, who's a young Kitchener goalie that is finding his footing in junior, and I think he was thrown into a really tough role being a starter in like his first and second year. But he's done a great job at persevering through that, and I truly believe that he will be a great goalie. And I also had the pleasure of coaching Marcus Medill, who is now the starter of Brampton, and he is another great goalie, and he's such a positive kid, and I wish him nothing but the best in Brampton. And I told him that I'll be watching his career as well throughout it.
Right, it's great to watch these guys from the young group all the way on up. You know, we got to do it with you, and now you get to do it with others as well.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure, and it's good to give back, I think, as well.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about lacrosse going into the Olympics in a couple of years. Being a goalie, your thoughts on sixes? Not very goalie friendly.
I'm not a huge fan of the dynamic of that. Like, I just don't understand why we don't do box. I thought that the tournament that they just did in Syracuse Utica. I thought that was awesome, and I was glued to the TV. I think it's tough because like some of these teams have guys that are like fully Canadian but have like a German background or an Israel background or whatever it is, right? And so it is tough, but like the sixes format, you score, and then the ball's being pulled out, and then they're going right back to the other way, and they score again. And I don't know. I don't love it, but I'm happy that the sport is being broadcast on the Olympic stage, and I guess that is like the biggest positive to take away from it.
Right. I always figured it this, as long as we can get the eyes, we can always teach them the real game after the fact.
Totally agree.
Now, lacrosse being an upswing, and now that it's everywhere with TV and all the other things, is full-time on the horizon, you think?
I sure hope so. I mean, I think you ask any guy, they'll probably have like their own opinion and probably a different opinion about it. I think like as far as the league goes, I would like to see like a 32 games like season. Like I know it's hard for like the body because it is a physical sport, but I think that there's no reason that like we couldn't do it. We play like 18 games in a short amount of time throughout the summer, and sometimes back-to-back nights. Like there's no reason that we couldn't, other than like the traveling of it. And I think boosting a little bit of the fan support in certain locations as well could be a big factor in why it's a little bit held back, because some crowds just aren't as good. But I mean, I think it'll be a really good and happy day when lacrosse is a full-time sport.
Right. You talk about travel. When you go to San Diego and then you have to be back in Buffalo, a little difficult, you think?
Yeah, totally. It can be hard to adjust to with the time changes. Sometimes we're actually off to San Diego this weekend, right? So that'll be a good bounce back game against those guys as well. But the travel can be tough. I'll say this about playing in Buffalo, and I'm sure it's the same about like Toronto and Rochester. You are so much closer as like an Ontario guy. You're so much closer to home. And the only time we've flown out this season so far, it was to Ottawa, and we're like 8 games. We're halfway through the season pretty much. And we haven't flown anywhere technically. So it's like, it's a huge benefactor to play in these places that are close to home. I truly believe it, because you're not flying to Vancouver and Calgary all the time and then coming back home in Ontario and then having to do it all over again. So that's super helpful. And it's a big benefactor of playing in Buffalo. Did I lose you guys? I can't. Sorry, Frank. I can't hear you.
Yeah, okay. I didn't want you to hear. Anyway, yeah. Once in a while, Gary goes away and then comes back, and I had my audio went on.
Thank you, Rogers. Me and them, we just don't get along.
Yeah, they can be fickle.
Glad to be back. I really want to thank you because I know you got a busy weekend ahead of you. Are you flying out tomorrow to San Diego?
Yeah, we fly out at 9 in the morning tomorrow to San Diego.
Right.
Yeah.
Wish you the best of luck. Wish you the best of luck for the season.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in net. Because
I appreciate it. I look forward to your write-ups throughout the summer. I've caught a couple of them. So it's good that we have people like you guys doing this kind of stuff and getting eyes on the sport, and especially Gary, the MSL, because I don't think there is enough of it. So right. I appreciate you guys very much for that kind of stuff.
I appreciate that. All the best. Thank you so much for taking all this time with us. And I'll be seeing you around. I'll see you around Bandit Land and some of the other rinks. Believe me, I'll be around. I put a lot of miles in.
Beauty. I can't wait. Thank you, guys.
Well, it's nice to talk to you because we get a perspective of being a backup goaltender, and it is. I've learned a couple of things on how you keep yourself busy as a backup goaltender, striking up relationships with referees. I mean, there's a lot of good information there, and yeah, there's a lot of work that you do. I think everybody who's watched this now understands and probably appreciates what you're going through and what you're doing to be a better player. It doesn't end just because you're not on the court.
Yeah, totally. And I'm glad that you guys gave me a platform to share that kind of stuff. A little trick of mine every time too, that there's like a TV timeout or a little bit of a break, there's always a ref in between the two benches. And I like to get in his ear and tell him he's doing a great job. And then I'll offer him a little bit of water as well to try to get him on his good side for us.
Drink, or do you throw it at him?
I give it to him. If I was
going to hand it to him and squirt him. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
If you've been
I know you were thirsty, yeah.
Thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. I appreciate you guys too.
Okay,
that was awesome.
Buffalo Bandits goaltender Steve Orleman. For Gary Groob and Steve, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching NLL Lacrosse Talk. If you get a chance to pick up a stick, trust me, you won't put it down. Thanks for watching, everybody.